Hi everyone, and welcome to my video on chapters 1 through 3. This is kind of just an overview video. I'm just going to be talking. There's no PowerPoint. This is review material. You've already been to Residency 1 and Residency 2, where we've talked about the first 3 chapters of the dissertation. But for some of you, it's been several months, a year. Others of you, it's been just a couple of days. So I want to kind of make this general to suit both audiences, so it'll be shorter. There's actually a lot of resources that you're going to find in this module that talk about the dissertation process, some information that you want to review about writing and about, other aspects of the dissertation. The issue here is that chapters 1 through 3 is what comprises your proposal, and it is the main bulk of the dissertation. The chapter 2, the literature review, is usually where you're going to have spent the most time. Chapter 3 needs to be very detailed because it's the recipe for your dissertation. And chapter 1 is kind of a little summary of all 3 chapters. So chapter 1 is kind of a mini summary of chapters 1, 2, and 3. If you look at it logically, the chapter 1 is really your prospectus. Chapters 1, 2, and 3 is your proposal, and then when you add chapters 4 and 5 to this, you're going to have your dissertation. Now, the things to consider here are that the more complete you make chapters 1, 2, and 3 when you're working on your proposal, the better off you'll be for your final dissertation. You should only really have to change the tense from future tense to past tense in those chapters and not really make any other changes. Now, sometimes your methodology will change as you're doing your research. You'll maybe plan to interview 20 people and you only interviewed 15, or you may have planned on doing a document analysis, but you weren't able to do any document analysis because there are no documents were provided to you. In those situations, you will need to adjust chapter 3 in order to reflect the changes that you actually did. You want to talk about what you actually did and take it away from what you were theoretically going to do. But that brings up a good point. In chapters 3, you do want to be sure that you are giving yourself some wiggle room. So you should never say I'm interviewing 20 people. You should say I'm interviewing 15 to 20 people. You want to make sure that you don't have to go back in very much. You just make small changes. And that's the goal here, is to you just are going to make small changes to the dissertation, chapters 1, 2, and 3, when you finish chapters 4 and 5. But let's just really quickly think about it. Since chapter 1 is going to be an overview, it's going to include all the aspects that you'll see in the prospectus. You're going to be talking about a little bit about the literature. You're going to give some background. You're going to talk about your problem statement. You're going to introduce your research questions, any terms that might be necessary. All of that's going to be in chapter 1. Then in chapter 2 is your literature review, and we've gone over the literature review in Residency 2. The literature review needs to be organized. It needs to be typically thematic, meaning that you're going to go over several themes that are going to be important to your final research. You're going to prove that there is a gap in the literature and that you're going to fill that gap. For a problem-based applied dissertation, you're also going to show that there's a problem in the field that you're going to solve with this research. The important thing to note is that by the time you're writing chapter 5, which is going to be your discussion chapter, you should not bring in any new literature into chapter 5. You should have covered enough literature in chapter 2 that any thing that you found, you should have something that you can discuss from chapter 2 to connect it to your findings. So really, you want chapter 2 to be very complete. You're going to read hundreds of articles, and you're not going to use them all, but you're going to read them, and that's an important part of this. A lot of students think that they can read 2 or 3 main articles and get the gist of it and write a literature review, and you can't do that. A literature review has to be comprehensive and cover a lot of literature, cover the review of all the literature on the topic that you're studying. Now, if you remember the 3 circles, you're going to look at those areas where the circles overlap, but you're going to want to be comprehensive in covering that overlap. Bringing in any seminal work that may be necessary as well. But the bottom line is that the literature review is hard. It's the hardest part, but it will be easier if you've done the reading. So start reading articles on your topic now. Use a good citation manager to keep track of your notes, keep track of your citations, have a good organizational scheme for your articles so that you have them on the computer in a certain space where you can always find them. These are important things to keep track of because you should be reading now about your topic. Get those articles started, get them building. I read a lot of articles before I ever got to my dissertation, and some of those I ended up going in a different direction. I didn't use any of them. However, surprisingly, later on, when I got into my literature review, I realized, well, maybe I can use some of these other literatures about psychology that I wasn't going to really cover. But then one of my chairs was like, you need to add more psychology to this. And I'm like, oh, well, I have articles about psychology. Let me pull those in. So I was prepared because I had done all this reading beforehand. So nothing goes to waste. Chapter 3 then is the complete methodology, and it is a recipe. You're going to tell us exactly what you're going to do. This is the basis for your IRB approval, and as you know, if you make any major changes, you're going to have to go back through IRB again. So you want to be as complete and comprehensive as you can. And you also want to make sure you have wiggle room in case some things go wrong. You have alternative plans. What is your plan B? If you're going to, say, for example, you're going to recruit participants from a national listserv. And let's say by the time you start your dissertation data collection, that national listserv closes down. What are you going to do? Or let's say that nobody responded to you from the listserv. What are you going to do? There should be a plan, a backup plan that is included in your research. There should always be like the primary idea and then a backup in case that primary idea dies or doesn't work. You won't need that for everything, but for the main things. And your chair will help to give you guidance on this. But just be sure you're thinking that way, that I need to be very detailed about what I'm going to do, but I also need to put the wiggle room in there as well. So it's a fine line, which could be the name of the dissertation, a fine line that you're walking through the whole process. So once you have chapters 1, 2, and 3 done, though, that's a major hurdle. Your proposal is a major stepping stone, and it's going to take some time, but when it's done, you're going to be super happy because it will have been a major milestone in your dissertation process. So good luck with that. This has been an 8-minute video, so hopefully it won't be too hard to watch, and there's going to be a lot of other good resources in the module. Make sure to work through all of them.